Welcome to episode 93 of Voices of Boyle. This week's guest is local historian Paul Connolly, who grew up looking at a ruin across the road from his school. There were sheep grazing in the yard, there were crows nesting in the rooms, and it was the kind of house you'd walk past 100 times without a second thought. However, it was this house that started it all for Paul. In this episode, Paul joins me to talk about the big houses of Roscommon, the ones we saved, the ones we lost, and the stories still standing in the ruins. So sit back and let's step into the landed estates of County Roscommon with Paul Connolly. I'm delighted to have you here on the Voice of Boyle. Paul, welcome.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Delighted to be here.
Great. I fancied a bit of a local history lesson for this episode, Paul, so no better man, I think, to regale us with some of the big house stories that you're going to cover.
Yeah, it's great to be back on Boyle. During the research phase of my book, we'll touch on this, of course, throughout the podcast, but it absolutely grew a massive love for this town. I really, really have, because it's a place I wouldn't have known that well, but it's great to be back. Great to be back on Boyle.
So before we get into the whole landed estate stuff and your book, Paul, maybe just tell us where you were born and where you grew up.
Yeah, I was born in Mount Talbot, County Roscommon, down south of Roscommon town, right on the border with Galway, actually. And I went to national school there, born there, and then I went to secondary school in Ballygar, which is actually County Galway. So, grew up there, and great time, and I go back there as often as I can, back to Mount Talbot, but I live in Ballycloone, in Galway.
And just maybe a couple of memories from your childhood that stand out for you.
The big memory for me, and this links into my interest in the landed estates in later years, of course, is Mount Talbot House. Mount Talbot House is right across the road from the National School. And it's ruin. And it's very, very, very visual from the playground in the front of the house, in front of the school, looking across at Mount Talbot House, and no one seemed to notice it. I was just thinking, there it is. Obviously, it was very opulent and whatever back in the day, but just there, sheep and crows and everything. And as I found out later years why, it just what it was associated with and everything. But I also found out that the last landlords were very, very nice and all of that, but we might touch on that a bit as well. So that's my early memory. And of course then my teacher, the principal in the National School, was a man called Timothy Cronin, better known as Sonny Cronin. And he was a man before his time. He sadly passed away in the early 80s, but he was very, very interested in history. He was just completing his PhD in the University College Galway at the time when he got a heart attack and he passed away. But he put a massive interest in history in us all. And just besides history even, the environment. You're looking at the late 70s, early 80s. He was way ahead of the game. Before biodiversity or environmental awareness or any of that was, commonly discussed or that, he was doing that. He was, like, for instance, the first flower of the spring. You brought in a flower and you were put into a little book, and the flower then was put up on a blackboard, the name of it, its name in Latin and its name in Irish. So every spring flower we knew in both Latin and Irish. And then at the end of the spring, or before we took off for the summer holidays, whoever had the most flowers brought in got a prize. So little things like that. He was just so ahead of his game. Probably should have been in a university, really. He wrote for Field and Stream as well, and he wrote, I think, he's a few articles on National Geographic. Very, very, very huge influence on me personally.
And so you had an interest then in history from an early age?
From a very early age, yeah. Now, my older brother, Tommy, sadly passed away, but he was a national school teacher, principal as well. He would have had a lot of interest, and he would have done interviews with the older generation, thankfully, around Mount Talbot as well. So that was there. And so there was always an interest. I always liked speaking and visiting older people. I don't know, when I was younger.
Well, they're the ones that are passing that history on.
Yeah, and I just did. And I'm delighted I did. Now, fortunately, with modern recording equipment and everything, we could have had that. But I would have wrote a lot of it down, Yes.
So. Well, that's at least there's something there.
Yeah.
Because I find myself, for me personally, I have only got really interested in history, local history, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think, as I was told by a few people, well, that comes with age. But in your case, and a lot of people, maybe I think a generation certain generations, they were just that history. Love for history was instilled in them from a young age, especially if you had a teacher like you had that's really instilled that into you.
Yeah, but like you say though, I sort of in the middle between, I'm in my early 50s now, and national school, secondary school, I went and did other things.
Of course,
but it was always there in the background, and I was always doing little things, but went on to, instead of doing history or anything, I was very interested in the wildlife and nature as well, because that came from Cronin. Sorry, Mr. Cronin, we used to call him. He was known as Cronin at home. And but I went off and done engineering then, off completely different in college. And
civil engineering.
Civil engineering,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
And you see, back in the day, it was sort of a safe
bet.
But my mum now, she wanted, just those choices: a civil service and the bank and these pensionable jobs, or a priest. And she realised fairly early the priest thing was not going to work out. I think she sort of resigned herself to that fact maybe after first or second year in secondary school. But so into done engineering. But as I said, would have been still sort of doing little things in the background on history. Okay,
so where then did your interest in landed estates come from then, Paul?
That came directly from, as I said earlier, about Mount Talbot House. So I done a book in 2014, which is hard to believe, it's 12 years ago, but so it was published in 2014, so I would have started researching that in 2010-11 on Mount Talbot, the village of Mount Talbot, and I went back to the Bronze Age, from the Bronze Age right through. It's called Mount Talbot, A Journey Through the Ages. Self-published book. And I didn't know what I was doing at the start. Sometimes I wonder, do I still know what I'm doing? But I just started writing. I started collecting photographs. And then, going back to what I spoke about earlier, I would have had stuff from back to national school even, and from those conversations with older men. I was gathering everything together. And then I can't remember how it happened, but I got in contact with a descendant of the Talbot Crosbys. Now, the Talbots of Mount Talbot were Talbot Crosbys, really. I won't go into the whole detail, but they were based in Ardfert in County Kerry, and one of the descendants of them got in contact, and that just opened up everything, because he sent me on photographs. Donald Cameron, very good friend. Turns out, we became very good friends in the end, but he sent me on photographs and documents and portraits and everything about the big house. So, of course, Mount Talbot House wasn't just the only thing in that book, but was a large part of it, because whoever the landlord was ran the show as such back in the day. So, gathered that, wrote about Mount Talbot House, introduced a lot of material that wasn't known about the family, and photographs that had never been seen before as well from Donald. So, through that then, of course, there's links to other houses, because they had a small pool of people they could marry and stuff like that. So I was getting information on Moat House or Moat Park and various other houses around Roscommon and into East Galway that I didn't use, because that book was solely focused on Mount Talbot. But I kept it. I left it there, and I said, sometime down, I might be able to do something with it. And that, I suppose, was the seed of the Landed Estates of County Roscommon book, but it wasn't, I had no idea what that would become either at that time.
So how did then because the Landed Estates of County Roscommon was published in 2018,
the first one, yeah.
So how did that come about then?
Yeah, as I said, I suppose 2 years after publication of the Mount Talbot book, it sold out very, very quickly. And I had this other material, and I hurled for Roscommon and Four Roads back in the day. Just to put it in perspective, I had free time then, and they took up an awful lot of time. It was a fantastic time in my life. It's been 16 years senior hurling with Four Roads, and a few years with Roscommon. We had very, very good teams. And then when you retire from that takes, I lived in Galway, so maybe 2-3 evenings a week training, either for club or county, and matches every weekend. There's a lot of time. We'd be driving to Down or Derry or Kerry or some Wicklow, the National Hurling League. That's a full day, or even a night before. We go to London to play London. All that time, and what do you fill that with when you stop? Because when you stop, you need to keep the brain active, with me anyway. So I tried golf, but wasn't much good. I could drive the ball. I was a full back at hurling, so I hit every fairway, but the little shots around the green and all that. That was for corner forwards, you know. So I tried a few things, but then I decided, look, I'll go into the history thing. And that's Mount Talbot. The journey to the Rages grew out of that. And then when I'd finished that, that's where I'm leading to with my story, but I had to fill a void there again when that book was published and had been printed and sold out. So then I said, look, I might go back to that material I have on the other landed estates and see what that is. So I revisited that at that stage.
Okay. And that's how you... and so you had all the material there.
Yeah.
And it's sold out twice.
It's sold out twice, yeah.
Right. And it's no longer available.
No longer available. And just to go back to the research phase and even the book itself, how it came about. I had all that material. I was going to do something with it, but I didn't know what I was going to do with it, Carol.
Yeah.
And I had all these ideas, but they were floating around in space. There was nothing linking them. There was no cohesiveness. And I came down to Boyle. I called Mary Mullins, who was a good friend. She was arts officer in Roscommon County Council at the time. Grew up in Bushy Park House beside me. We'd be close, the Mullinses and ourselves. And I said, is there anyone, you know, I just sort of thrown out a few ideas. Just go and meet Tommy Egan in Boyle. And I didn't know who Tommy Egan was. I never heard of him. I don't think I was in maybe King House once. Tommy worked in King House. So I called down. Took a day off work, popped down into Tommy, didn't know him, introduced myself to him. And he was so helpful.
He's
he was
good.
Extraordinary. And in his own quiet, way, no fuss. And he told him what I needed. And straight away, he gave me Trina's brilliant book on Rockingham. And there was one on King House. And he said, come in here. So he brought me into some little room in King House there off the hallway. Give me a computer, loads of photographs of the house when it was in poor condition and during the renovation. Modern photos, but I had my own camera as well. And it just was an amazing experience because suddenly, while I was sitting scanning photographs on my own, like, he was very trusting, but he knew through Mary Mullins who I would have been someone you could trust. And, I was thinking, and all that time I was thinking, that these ideas I said I was floating, they started to sort of come together. Of what I will do with this. I was thinking about a book, but what form of a book or what chapters or how would it all go together? And spent about 3 or 4 hours there, and other staff there were fantastic as well. Mary Lavin.
That's right.
Yeah,
Mary
she was
Lavin.
brilliant.
We've had her on here as well.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Just a really, really helpful, a really nice. Yeah. And so I left there after 3 or 4 hours, drove back to Galway. And on the journey back, landed estates of County Roscommon formed in my head what I needed to do. And that was to do chapters on 12 of the sort of major houses, which would have the most information. Again, of course, would be very important.
Yeah.
I didn't know which ones, but I knew King House and Rockingham would be there because I had all this information. I had those 2 chapters, the bones of it there from Tommy. And Mount Talbot was sorted. Moat would have been half sorted. Moat Park, sorry, I keep calling it Moat, but it was known as Moat House. From the Croftons were linked to the Talbot. So there was 4 or 5 I sort of had. And then I knew, I knew then, this is going to be the format of the book. And just through Mary, I think, in the King House, or Tommy, or someone said it to me, about the smaller houses, the mid-sized or smaller estates, could you put them in anywhere? And then that was the final chapter 13, unlucky for some, but was lucky for me, all the other, and I put in this 70, 80 of those, so just one photograph and a small bit of information. Right. And that grew out of that day, and that worked. It really worked. It
finished off.
It did. Yeah. And you see, a lot of them, there wouldn't be much information on them, so you couldn't do much on them, but just try to put in its name, obviously, when it was built approximately, and its current condition, and maybe who lived there. And that's enough. And, some people, I got a lot of commentary afterwards from people in the UK and Ireland and America and Australia whose ancestors would have lived in these houses and would have bought the book. So, that's how the landed estates of County Roscommon came into being.
Okay, and you mentioned to me beforehand that you also got a lot of help from Una Vaughan as well.
Una Vaughan, yeah. Then, when I published the book and it was launched in Roscommon, I just want to mention as well that the tourism officer was Emer O'Dowd, she was a brilliant help for me as well. She gave me photographs on French Park, which I'd nothing on. And then she launched the book for me as well. And of course, Piers O'Connor Nash. They all came after King House. He was absolute, still is, very, very, we'd be over and back a lot in the years since. And Una Bawn, I was self-publishing. It spent a lot of money on it. Like you're looking at large 5-figure sum. Like.
Absolutely, yeah.
Full colour book at the size of it and the thickness of it and all that. And
it's a coffee table.
It's a coffee table book.
It is.
And I got, for the first edition, I got maybe 10% in funding. Emer, I mentioned Emer, she got me funding. And Roscommon Library, I got some from them. So I got 10% of the cost. But the other 90% I had to come up with myself. So distribution then, how to try and make my money back. The launch night was a big one. I sold a good few books on that. But then I needed to sell them all really to break even, in real terms. Like. So I was looking for outlets and someone mentioned Una Bawn in Boyle. So I called down. And again, in the door, and Anna Robinson.
Oh, she's been on it as well.
Has she been on this? And again, we are very, very good friends, very close friends now. And that's a lot of what come out of this research of the book and publishing of the book and post-book is that.
She's such a wealth of information.
She is, and she's so nice.
She has a certain way about her.
She has a way about her and very, very supportive. And they started selling me the book. And the other ladies that were there as well. You know, we just got on really, really well. And going to the tea room next door then for my...
Cuppa.
Oh, yeah. Again, lovely people.
It's a lovely, it is.
Jeepers.
Tightly knit community
and as I said earlier, I miss that. I miss, because he's coming down regularly with books. Because they sold so many for me in there. Yeah. Really, really did. And they were the difference between me breaking even or not. And that was Anna and the crew and Una Bawn.
And so, Paul, you also have, most people would know as well if they're interested in the topic, you have a big Facebook page with 22,000, I think, at the moment.
22,000 at the moment.
And growing.
Yeah. Every morning I get up, there's 10 or 12 more from all over the world, Carlo. Like, it's extraordinary, really. And I started that really to try and get information for the book. So, say 2018 I launched the book. I'd say it was early 2018 or maybe late 2017. I can't remember. I set that up just purely looking for information. And then it's just sort of developed. And I'm not on Instagram now or X or any of those because I just don't have time. Like I have to work and that as well.
Plus, I think a good Facebook page for this type of project is more than enough.
It works for me anyway. And, I'm not very tech savvy, to be honest, as well. So it's fairly simple. Anyone could use it. But yeah, that just started to grow and grow and grow. And like just before I arrived in, I had a message there, on Messenger and another house that's never been seen before, a photograph from England is after arriving. So people are giving me this stuff nearly every day. And it's so exciting as well. There's nothing like getting information or getting photographs that haven't been seen.
Of course.
And people are very, very good. They're very, very good. And I think the fact I self-published the books, which are gone anyway, and that there's no advertisements or that on my page. I think I could possibly make money on that if I knew how, but there isn't. And I think people sort of look at this fella is just interested. It's a hobby. They like the page and they do send me on material. And I think it works. And we've a serious collection now.
Yeah,
serious
absolutely.
Collection.
And it's an engaging page as well. You get a good engagement on the posts.
I do, yeah.
Which is the difference as well. Because when you have people commenting and chatting over and back, they're going over old history and old memories of them.
And it's extraordinary. I've had cousins unite in the comment section under that didn't know they were cousins. That one person flew from Australia to America to meet they met underneath the photo. I forget which house it was. But it's also brought a lot of people to Roscommon. I remember getting a message from a guy in the UK. This was shortly after I launched the book, actually, but early 2019. He was sitting in a house somewhere in England. My book was on the coffee table. You mentioned the coffee table book. And he saw it. And he said, Roscommon, for Ireland. Started looking through it. Liked what he saw my page, went on that, and he contacted me after, but he'd never been in Ireland only for rugby internationals. He'd go to what was Lansdowne Road, now the Aviva for matches, but never ventured outside Dublin really. But himself and 3 friends came to Roscommon, 4 guys, and spent a week here, and they brought the book with them. And they stayed at some of the houses you can stay in. They stayed there and visited all the other sites. So, and that's happened numerous times. The amount of people.
That's great.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant
great to get a clip like that. Someone's.
And what they like about it is they didn't know. And you travel a lot yourself. When you go somewhere and it's new, it's exciting, and they find that here in Roscommon, really, really do.
And to have all that history collated in one book as well, is very important.
Yeah, and it's simply the English is simple in it. It's written like there's lots of information in it, but it's easy follow. And I remember, Carlo, just to divert a bit again, I met a lady. Oh, I didn't meet her. She sent me a message to say her 12-year-old daughter, I think they were in Cork or Kerry, like no connection to Roscommon, brings a book to bed with her and reads it at night. And she's now 14, 15. She's going to do history.
Isn't that class?
Do you know? And she's got to concentrate on the big houses.
So that book could have instilled in her that love for history that you talked about.
Yeah, she said she just picked it up again from the coffee table, I don't know, and started reading it. Just what I'm trying to suppose come across is that the English is pretty simple. She could understand it and follow it. And so stuff like that is.
But also fall in love with the idea of these old estate houses.
Exactly.
That she wants to pursue it further down the line.
Yeah, and it's the old photographs of particularly the ladies of the manor and their dress and the way that just with younger people sometimes it resonates like fairy tale or whatever.
So Paul, for someone listening that might not fully understand the term, what exactly was a landed estate?
Yeah, a landed estate.
I include myself in this as well.
Well, it's these were estates that were set up. They're mainly the start of the 18th century. You're looking at, after the wars of the Cromwellian War and the big one, the Williamite War, when everything changed really after that. And these estates started to develop where one person or one family owned 15, 20, 25,000 acres or whatever, were given it, and they rented it out then to the native Irish generally, or in some cases settlers from other countries, from Scotland or England, and like Henry Ford's ancestors. They were evicted from a farm in Cork. Not many people know that, but they were Church of Ireland. So the estates were set up, and they were set up, 15, 20,000 acres. A lot of rent came in from that, and from that rent then they were able to build these mansions. And Roscommon, we have a lot of them. Now a lot of them are gone, but we had just parts of Roscommon are very good land, and the quality of the house generally, and the quality, the size of it, everything comes from the land and what they could get out of it from rent. So you need decent land for that. And there was massive estates in Roscommon, and that developed right through. Then the 19th century, of course, was the early 19th century, in particular, before the famine, was the pinnacle of the landed estates after the Napoleonic Wars. But then the famine had a massive effect on Ireland, of course, the tenantry particularly. And that's discussed in my book as well, particularly in relation to Strokestown Park House and others as well. Yeah. And it's all in the book, the bad and the good. And they started to break up then and get into financial difficulties. And then the land wars, the 1880s with the Land League, you've heard of Michael Davitt and all those. And the big one then was the Wyndham Land Act that went through the Houses of Parliament in the UK in 1903, I think, 03, 04. And that was a game changer. The landlords then could get good money for their land, and they just wanted to sell up and leave. And that's when most of the estates were broken up in Ireland. And I certainly had a belief that the War of Independence changed everything. The land question was more or less decided before that. A lot of the land had been divided either by the Land Commission, mainly the Land Commission, or the Congested District Boards. But all that was left really at that stage was the big houses were still there, of course, but the untenanted land, the land around the estate, the domain land, which is still a lot of land, and usually the best land. But that wouldn't have been divided. But most of the estates were broken up by the War of Independence, which there was a great book brought out about the War of Independence, the Revolutionary years in Roscommon. They're nationwide, to do every county. Now, I can't recall the name of the guy that wrote the Roscommon one, but it's worth buying. It's absolutely brilliant, because he totally focuses, rightly so, because that's what's in the papers, that's what's in all the archives. Land. The War of Independence, an awful lot of it was to do with land. And getting those untenanted farms and breaking up the estates completely and getting the domain land and all that. And so after that, the estates were gone, really. After the War of Independence, the 1923, our first Land Act under the Free State, that just broke up what was left.
Right.
So you're left with these mansions with no land and no income.
Okay. Right. And how much influence then, Paul, did these families have in towns like Boyle?
Oh, massive. Absolutely. Like, they controlled everything. And a lot of it, not a lot of it, some of it for the good. Do you know, Boyle, you had the Kings, the King Harmons, and you had the Frys, and you had all these large landed families. And in Mount Talbot, we had the Talbots, and there was some of the Talbots in the middle there around the 19th century that weren't very, very nice. There was some evictions, but the last landlord was very well liked. Promoted hurling. I mentioned I played hurling. Organised matches, organised pitches. Again, the estate was broken up at that stage. But yeah, it was a big change. But the landlord class didn't really exist after the War of Independence, and that was the end of it. Really, the good times.
Yeah, and estates then like Rockingham and King House, were they connected socially or politically or both?
Oh yeah, you see. They all, as I mentioned a bit earlier about Mount Talbot, they all had to marry each other.
Yeah, there's a small pool of...
They all usually went to boarding school together in the UK, or into the British military or whatever, and they would all know each other. Like there was garden parties. I got records of garden parties in Mount Talbot. The Frenches from French Park would be there. The King Harmons would be there. They all socialised together, and the hunts was a big thing. A big hunt, or these balls would have been held in Rockingham and King House. And big social gatherings, and political heavy hitters of the time as well. Like politics was controlled by them. Really before, I suppose, with the Irish Parliamentary Party then changed that a bit when they came on board. But they controlled everything, really. The good and the bad, as I said. And around Boyle, driving back to Boyle, as I said, I actually love coming into Boyle. And the road from Boyle to Carrick, they're all houses. You saw there's some lovely houses. They're all connected. They're all built. Those gate lodges, there was 7 gate lodges in Boyle for Rockingham. They're all very, very different. You know, you have the Tiara Gate Lodge and the 50 Pids.
The 50p, the 50p one, yeah.
They're all different, completely different. And they were all built for the gentry, and they would have had families in it. And of course, the landed estates provided massive employment. My own grandfather worked on the Mount Talbot estate. And when they were more or less thrown out during that very, very volatile time between the War of Independence and Civil War, when it was a bit all over the place, the Talbots were attacked in the house, who would have been well liked locally. It was local members of the Republican forces that saved their lives, actually, and got them away. But like that was the end of it. And they would have been very well liked in the communities, the Talbots.
Okay,
you know,
yeah,
But again, there's always bad eggs. There's bad eggs in every family. And every family has an era where, most of them anyway, where just there wasn't some...
I think King House definitely had that, didn't it?
They did a bit, yeah. They did a bit. But there's some amazing stories about the families. Like, a descendant of the family, again, through another contact, I got in contact with a living descendant, a granddaughter of the last owner, Sir Cecil Stafford King Harmon. And she invited me to her house. She lives in the northwest of Ireland. So shortly after COVID, I got in my car, took a day off, and went up and met her and her husband. And you know, she'd given me that just opened up a whole new source of information as well, family information. And
that wouldn't be the Tyndall, Rosemary.
Yeah,
okay, I've heard about her.
Yeah.
She's one of the last.
She's really, and she was down actually. I'd give the first talk at the King House 30-year anniversary there last year.
You did.
Herself and her husband. Oh, yes, right. Herself and her husband Charles came down to that, and like the Frenches of French Park became very, very good friends with the descendants of them. One of them, Michael Johnson, he's coming over again to visit me in summer this summer. And he's given me an extraordinary collection of photographs and videos. And present Lord Dufresne, I met him in Tuam for a cup of tea. I think he's a quantity surveyor in the UK. But the thing I found about them is they class themselves as Irish. Very much class themselves. And they would be in the UK for a generation or two now. And they'd be very strong in that opinion now. And the same with many of the descendants, where they would, like if Ireland are playing England at rugby, they'd be shouting for Ireland. Like, and That's one thing that surprised me, I have to say. But yeah, they've been brilliant, and Rosemary was fantastic, and still is. I just emailed her recently, actually, with a few photographs I got off Rockingham just prior to demolition. Colour photographs I got from Sean Brown in Castlereagh. Extraordinary, beautiful, rare colour photographs of the standing building. You know, it was roofless or whatever, but I sent them to her, and she just sent me back. You know, it's just, as I said earlier, met some very, very good friends out of this, and they know that back in their history there was people that were unsavoury instances happened, and some of them, you know, the worst, the funny thing is the worst of them would have been in Strokestown, and that's the one that's standing, and that's the one that's now busloads of tourists, and you have the famine centre.
You do. It's a great setup.
It's a great setup, and you know, I do often get, not often, but sometimes on my page you'll get comments. Particularly I find 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning now on a Saturday night, and
might be the odd drinks.
Yeah, and he might have listened to a few Rebel songs or something, and you get all this stuff. They'll all be demolished and levelled and all. But you know, when you see what Strokestown Park has done, you see what King House has become.
And that was, they tried to turn that into a big multi-story car park or something.
Yeah, and you know, and that has links then to the military, the Civil War, the War of Independence. Yeah. You know, the jailbreak there with Matt Malloy's father.
Matt Malloy's father.
Yeah. You know, and the dockeries, all that, like, and then the later, and then it going into dereliction, and then it being brought back, and as you said, so near being demolished. Yeah. And you know, it's through the photographs, like, we lost some absolutely extraordinary houses, like French Park. And as I said, Michael Johnson and the present Lord Dufresne, there's numerous others, and there was Morris French, who sadly passed away. He gave me an extraordinary amount of information on it. Like, that was an absolutely beautiful house, and that dated back to the 17th century. 1667, the centre block of that building was built using brick imported from Holland. Some fella had come from Holland into Galway with a ship full of bricks. He was going to start a new life in Galway, but I think, I work in Galway, I think it started raining. And it rained, and he just decided, this is not for me. So he sold the bricks to the Frenches, who were one of the tribes of Galway, of course. And he had land got in Roscommon and a bit in Sligo, and he came down and built King House, the centre block, first 2 stories of that, dates to 1667. Dated to 1667, it's gone. And that had brick on the outside and inside, and turf, peat in the middle as an insulator. Like, that was so unusual construction. And it was there up until the 1950s. Fully functional until the night. The family lived there to 1951 or 2. They sold it on, and the last Baron Dufresne that was there tried to give it to the government, because the only hope for these houses was schools or hospitals or
some state
colleges. Yeah. Now, we have to, and again, I'd openly acknowledge this, and this is to be said on my page a lot, and it's fully true. Ireland in the 1950s was in economic turmoil. 500,000 Irish people immigrated between 1950 and 1960. We were in horrendous difficulty. I remember my late uncle telling me, you know, going to the fairs or with calves, you couldn't sell calves. He was seeing people leave calves at a fair and walk home without them because they were worthless. Ireland was in a terrible, terrible state. So there was no money to do anything with these houses. And that's when a lot of them were demolished, you know. But if they just had the foresight not to demolish them, you know. Just leave them.
If they were structurally okay to leave.
And that's, Rockingham is one of those.
Yeah, so like I'd like to obviously Rockingham has been discussed a lot over the years, and so what exactly happened the night of the infamous fire in
1957? Yeah, during the night it went up in flames. Now the owners were at racing their thoroughbred racehorses, and they're in England, and the staff would have been there. And again, I'm on about employment. There would have been a large staff still employed, and fire started in the basement, I think, or the kitchens or somewhere, and spread all over the house at night. It was at night. And the locals rallied around, and they went in and they saved a lot of the furniture. Some of that furniture I saw on my trip to the northwest, I mentioned, to the descendant. They still have it. That was saved that night by the locals of Boyle. And they got out a lot of the material, but a lot of it went up in flames. So the cause of the fire, again, in the dark recesses of some of those posts, you get all these sort of theories, you know. But bottom line, it was up on fire. The family then looked at refurbishing it. Structurally, it seemed fine, but just the costs were too much. And like, they were living in Kildare, I think, and a lot of the time in the UK with horse racing. They just decided not to. But it stayed as a ruin then until the 1971. And just recently, I mentioned those photographs Sean Brown gave me, like, their colour and they're clear. And it was structurally sound. There's no doubt about it. It was. And what you see with Kilronan Castle, like what that has become.
Yeah, that was a derelict
That was
room.
trees growing up. That was in probably worse condition than Rockingham was in 1971. Yeah. And King House, we mentioned what they've done there. I might talk a bit about that refurbishment. But also Castlecoot House, where Tony Comboy. You had Tony.
Tony, that's
Tony
right.
was born in Castlecoot House. There, beautiful house, a huge history going back into the Cromwellian War and even the 9 Years' War and into the Williamite War. But that was burnt down in 1989. That would have been similar to Rockingham, and the new owner, has refurbished that. That's absolutely beautiful. And you have the Percy Fringe Festival there, and you have all these. Paddy Joe Burke, the famous Paddy Joe, is there at the moment doing a few talks as well. So that's what can happen. But it's to go back to the point about the houses being demolished. The 1950s, they couldn't see that. You could never see Ireland. The Celtic Tiger was like, if you said Ireland would be, swimming around in money, they would have laughed at you at that time. So it's a pity.
Yeah. Would there have been a political element?
Oh, there was. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Because the 1950s saw the Fianna Fáil government go in. These houses would have been associated with the landed gentry and a time in Ireland where they wanted to erase. There's no doubt about that. Because Moat Park, Moat House, like Jack McQuillan, who was a fantastic footballer for Roscommon, won 2 All-Irelands with Roscommon in the 40s. He was a TD. And he brought it up in the Dáil. The debate is there about Moat. But Moat was demolished using explosives. He was going, why? Just leave it. Something will happen. If you leave it long enough, we will find a purpose for it. And it didn't. And that was down to politics a lot of the time. And erasing the past.
I think so. I think that has a big part.
And as I said, I just still get that on my page now and again. And look, people have their opinions, it's fine. And, maybe there was some terrible, like Strokes, but I go back to Strokes. Strokestown was the worst. And that's standing. And you see what that has become. So they can be used for positivity as well. I think that I do a lot of then and now's photo, where you
yes,
have
you do, yeah.
And I have one of Kilronan Castle derelict, and the same angle in today, modern photo. And on the modern photo, you have a tricolour, on the top of the castle. Surely that's a bigger victory than demolishing it and then saying, we got rid. Like, that's probably, I don't know, the Henley's ancestors probably were tenants. And Strokestown Park, the same thing. Jim's ancestors were tenants at Strokestown Park. So that's better, is it not?
Yeah, and I think in Rockingham's instance, Paul, what they erected in its place is, I think, the real stickler. Is because if they just took it away and left it empty, in my view, it's a little bit better. But then again, everyone is different.
Everyone is different, and you can understand what they've done in certain extents. But what's there, I don't like. I try not to comment because you don't want to, because
of course.
Some people mention it's brutish architecture or something.
Yeah, brutalist.
Brutalist. Sorry.
Brutalist,
and whatever. But just going back to the photographs from Sean Brown, they could have done that on a corner of the existing building. So structurally sound, just one corner, because that time there wasn't the whole thing you'd have now with you're doing up a building with the preserved structure and all you have to do all these things as per the rules. And that time you could build like what they did. They demolished and built what they did. But they could have done that in the corner of the existing building and put a stairs through it. So you could view from what's there.
Yes.
Use it for that even. And it would cost nothing, really. No. But it's a great pity, because I do think it would have been done up. I really do think in the years since, and particularly during the Celtic Tiger years.
Oh, it would have been. If the shell was there,
I think it would have been.
Definitely.
And imagine if you had the main entrance into Lough Forest Park in there, and the rooms done up. Now they're doing up, I think, the stable yard and all that, which is it's lovely.
There's a big project going on.
Big project, and that's brilliant. And the project, the old Stewart's house, is being done up.
And Kingston Hall as well, I think. Is
that's the same one.
Yeah, okay,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I met the gentleman and his family that are doing that, and that's brilliant for Boyle, and it's brilliant for everything. And that's, to me, that's better. It has to be better because it's causing him. It's creating employment. It's bringing people to the county, and tell the story.
Exactly.
If you want to tell the story, tell it the good and the bad, and
because those ancillary buildings have still so much history attached to them.
They do.
Apart from the main house, so it's important to uncover them.
Oh, it is, yeah. And Boyle particularly. As I mentioned, that road from Boyle to Carrick, and you go even into the Lockheed at the moment, you go in and there's the ferry bridges there, and you have the Drummond Bridge.
Drummond
Bridge.
Yep.
You have all this, and the beautiful the fishing temple, or the temple they call it.
That's right there.
It's just
looking Castle Island.
Yeah, looking over at Castle Island.
So speaking of Castle Island then.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot has been talked about that over the late, but what was the Castle Island actually used for?
It was used by the gentry. Now, it's called a folly. It's built as a folly. Of course, there was a McDermott castle there, and there's a remarkable work being carried out there by archaeologists in recent years who have matched history with archaeology, which very rarely happens. In the annals of the Four Masters and the various other sources, there's the talk of the fire there engulfing the island and a wall around it and only one door and people being incinerated. That's coming through in the archaeology. They're finding evidence of fire. They found evidence of that wall. And the McDermotts would have had probably a tower house or whatever on the island. So then that McDermott's power waned and the kings came in, took the land, and it was left derelict for a while. And they built what's called a folly, but they built an actual building in the existing tower house is enclosed in it, it's part of it. And they would have used it. I've heard a source from Rosemary, one of her documents, where the king women would go there in times of war. They'd be brought across to the island, I suppose for safety. That must be the early days now. And but then in the 19th century, the glory days of the 19th century, landed estates in Ireland, there's tea. They used to go row across for tea. They'd have tea there, or maybe have, mainly the ladies, mainly that's what it was used for, as a place for them. And and then of course I mentioned that the landed estates, what happened to them, and it actually was burnt as well in 1938. And Rosemary has an album of photographs of the morning after the burning of McDermott's Castle, or Castle Island. You can see the smoke billowing.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, really sad, but it's great to have that shit there in her private collection as well. So,
because I don't think I've ever seen photos of that on fire.
Yeah. Now they're from the distance, they're from the mainland, and they're small black and white photos. But I'm sure they could be. I have them scanned in actually. They could be modern technology made sharper. Although people get very annoyed when I sharpen photos or colorise photos.
I know it is a thing, but again,
well, any photo that's in good condition, that's what goes up. But some of them are blurry. Like some of them, and I try not to, but it does a fantastic job.
It does a serious job.
And I might alter something or other, but sometimes I think it works.
Yeah, and look, you're always going to get some people that
and I fully understand, and I probably agree with them to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, I think if it alters it significantly, it's like, that's not even, that building wasn't there. That's different.
And what I do is I get the original, and I look at the two of them, and they're generally the same. Yeah, and if there's any change, if there's anything funny, you just don't use it, you delete it. But
even if it's because a lot of the modern software can, with photos, as you know, Paul, it can take out that grain out of it. That
it can,
and it smooths it. And it just makes it a little bit more appealing on the eye without changing anything else with the photo. Yeah,
like the Rockingham on Fire now, 1957. Those famous photographs. Actually, Rosemary gave me the originals, but they appeared in the Roscommon Herald at the time of nighttime. And you can see the moon behind and Rockingham in flames. The whole building is black because it's nighttime. It's very, very, very powerful photograph. There's two of them. But I put that into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And I said, show this on fire. That's all I said.
Yeah.
And what it produced. It's all fake.
Of course.
But the photo itself, you can't really see anything because it's dark. But this just put it on fire and it left the moon behind. And I know it's very much touchy or whatever, but just for that,
just to give your brain a little kind of insight into what this might have looked like.
Look, it looks very like I can imagine what it would have looked like, but it's not it, and I'd fully accept that it's not original. But just now and again, I will do something strange like that. And it got a good reaction.
Of course.
Now, there was another photograph, a very famous photograph of the taken from the entrance into Rockingham House, of the stairway. Oh, the stairway was...
Yes, I remember.
It was like cantilevered.
Yes.
And it looked like, I think, an eagle. I'd say the architect was thinking of it, or an angel. Do you know how the sides come up and it's cantilevered? But the original photo was fairly good, but I just put it into some sort, and it just came up beautiful. And clear and accurate. And I put that up on my Facebook page, and the reaction to it was off the charts. Because it just made it so...
How it would have looked like in its day.
And but the original is... I usually use the original, and I'll always put the original in the comment section.
Well, you're dead right, because and you're just being transparent there.
Yeah, and I don't like doing it, but it's just with that particular one, it made it just absolutely very, very...
Well, I think in them instances, Paul, like given the then and now, and you're using AI to just say, imagine this is what it would look like if you had your eye looking at this back in the day.
Yeah.
Everyone knows.
Yeah, and say it.
Yeah,
and I always say it, and but I don't. But I use it rarely.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm after the ones I got a set of photographs recently now, and they're very good condition, so they'll remain
exactly as they are. No need.
But there's more coming as well, Carlo. Yeah. I have an album coming from the UK soon. There's some great stuff in that. Sean Brown has a load more stuff for me. He got a collection of photographs from a lady that her dad had a chemist shop. So, they would have been developing photos. He was a keen photographer in Castlereagh, and he's given them all to me. And he has, I think, 3,000 photographs for me coming to me.
Well, that's a treasure trove.
Yeah, and Sean is brilliant. And none of these have been seen before. Yeah. Now, not all of them would be related to the Landed Estates, but a lot of them would. There's ones there off Castlereagh House, which is demolished as well. Yeah. These ones of that from the 50s, 40s, 50s, Yeah. And that had a fire too. And these were taken by that man in the chemist shop. So I'm looking forward to getting those.
And you mentioned earlier on there, Paul, about the gatehouses. And what I'm wondering is, why do gatehouses survive when the main house, as we've seen in multiple examples, why do they survive?
Very, very good question. Purely because of the size of them. Your family can live in them, practically. After the War of Independence or after the estates are broken up, you could have someone living there that's a teacher, or that's a guard in the new Free State, or you could have a family that's in a trade, and they're beautifully built, but they're easily maintained, and they're small. And where the big house, you couldn't maintain it. There was no money there to maintain it. And where the smaller ones, the gate lodges, or even the ancillary buildings, like you could have a dower house or something like that, that's smaller. They survived. And they're the ones between Boyle and Carrick. Yeah. They're all manageable.
Right.
And that's why they remained, really. And they're very well built as well. So.
Yeah, they're built to last.
I had an aunt living, she passed away, but she lived in a herd's house, was it, in Mount Talbot. Beautiful, beautiful cut stone. Small, little attic, really quaint house, but that was built as a herd's house, and that dated to about the 1740s. It's still there. So, yeah, they're manageable, and if you're going through Mount Talbot village, actually, a lot of the houses on the left that are still standing were built by the Talbots. One of them was for the land steward. The post office was built by them. There was a national school that's gone now that was built by them, and my aunt's house is built by them, and various others. Okay. So they did survive, mainly, well, purely really because of their size.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So to segue then into Frybrook House.
Oh yeah, Frybrook.
Where does that fit in then, Paul?
Well, I suppose they're a bit different to landed estates, really, because they were trade. They were weavers, and they came as weavers to Ireland from Bristol in the UK. They came to Edenderry in Offaly first, then on to Athlone, and then came to Boyle. They were invited to come to Boyle by the King Harmons, and they set up a weaving business. So Frybrook was built in the 1740s. And I got to visit Frybrook last summer. The present owners invited me. So I have my wife and kids. We were going to Sligo. We spent a bit of time. We love Sligo actually, and we were on our way. And we called in, and we got a full tour of it. Lovely summer's day, and walked in the avenue there. And it's a beautiful, beautiful house. Like it must be the oldest inhabited house in Roscommon.
Really?
Of that size.
Okay.
I'd imagine it's one of them anyway. Again, I'd always get into trouble. I'd just say Dunavon Castle is the oldest inhabited castle in Ireland. I'd get into awful trouble from Cork people and Kildare people saying, oh no, there's a house, there's a big... But anyway, it must be one of them, definitely. And what's unusual about Frybrook, it doesn't have a basement. They always had a basement, but that's beside the river, so maybe they were a bit afraid of flooding. So the Frys built it, and they're connected to the chocolate.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right,
And they were not a landed family, but that would have been a big house. And they were very charitable people. They were Quakers, as far as I can remember. They were Quakers.
I've heard that.
Yeah, and during the famine, they would have done a lot for people around Boyle. And apparently there's still actually, the soup pots.
Yes, yeah. There's one on the just there on past Roddy's in Boyle.
In Boyle,
yeah.
Well, there's one in the kitchen still of Frybrook. Was there? Yeah, they actually no government help. The Frys themselves cooked food for the starving people, and they had a bell you'd ring in the evening when dinner was ready, and anyone could come in for dinner, and they'd feed them. And sometimes they'd set up tents in the lawns. They did. It was very, very rarely said. And they weren't trying to convert anyone or anything. This was purely charity. Yeah. They're very charitable people. And that happened.
Okay. Back would you think then the house was underappreciated then, historically?
I think so, yeah. Well, that's like Boyle people would remember. The older generation probably would have heard about it. But what Ireland became, of course, it didn't fit the narrative really. Quakers and, but they done an enormous amount of good work, especially in Connemara and even in the crockery there. The lady brought out a great book on the Quaker community there, and it just mightn't have fitted the narrative, but it's known and it should be known.
Yeah,
it should be known.
And so then, what would you think, Paul? What kind of a responsibility will come with owning a house like Frybrook then?
A lot of responsibility, and they really should get help. I think people owning houses now they're part of this. There's a network, the group national network there of houses, historic houses of Ireland, who maybe they'll be able to support and they'll be able to work together to get people to visit and that. But it's a lot of money. It's a lot of cash. Now they have a great product. It's beautiful, and I'd recommend anyone to visit Frybrook or to arrange to visit Frybrook. Now it's currently for sale. But whatever it's sold, I would, and whatever happens there, if it is open to the public, it's beautiful.
It is.
It's absolutely beautiful, and the last owners deserve great credit for what they done with it.
Yeah, they did a good renovation.
They did, and like their plasterwork, they're explaining to me the plasterwork, the cost of the plasterwork. As I said, it's a listed building, a recorded structure, so there's all these rules and regulations are supposed to use special materials, and they did.
And even the windows, the glass and stuff like that.
It's just stunning. My wife Martina would have designed my book. She laid out my book for me, and we visit a lot of them, and we just, because you can't see it really. You go in the avenue and there it just appears, and we were very impressed. Now we got a really nice day, really nice sunny day, but yeah, and hopefully, I'm sure the future of it is secure. But I think every help possible should be given. Like you look at Strokestown, they got a lot of money from the government, and that rightly so, for the Family Museum, and there's more being invested in it now, I believe. Yeah. So that's brilliant. That's brilliant, and that's the only thing that'll make it feasible.
Of course, without the grants and without the state aid, it's very difficult. Just
to divert a bit, I was researching for the King House talk I was giving last summer on the 30-year anniversary, and newspaper reports, on when the county council were wondering what to do with it. And they were the county manager, who was Connolly, no relation of my own actually, but he deserves great credit for biting a bullet in the 80s, and I mentioned the 50s in Ireland. I lived through the 80s. It wasn't pleasant either, with immigration, and the economy was in tatters. And a forward-thinking county manager in county council King House decided to do something with King House, and they were started spending a bit of money on consultants and research and what to do with it, and they were renting it out to various people. But I remember one of the councillors saying, "This is a complete waste of time. Knock it. We were spending ratepayers' money on this rubbish. And this is what was there." And fair play to the manager at the time. He dug his heels in and kept going, and then got some grant aid, and then what is there now is phenomenal. Yeah. It's phenomenal. And I'd like to mention Patricia in King House. Well, I mentioned Tommy Egan. Patricia is very, very supportive of me.
Very, very.
And she invited me to give that talk, and I've done a talk there for the Arts Festival as well. A lovely evening. You did?
That wasn't this last year, was it?
It was a while ago.
Oh, you did a couple of years prior to that as well.
That was lovely. That was a packed house. Yeah. And I love the venue. And anytime I'm passing, I'll call in today now on the way back. But Patricia has been very good to me, and all the staff in there.
Yeah, they are very nice.
And they're very helpful. And and as I said to you earlier, I've made some great, great friends out of the book and out of everything. And in the Boyle area.
Paul, are there any other houses in and around Boyle?
There is. The big one for me, the big Castle Island is my favourite. Of course, just to go back to Castle Island a bit, Yeats loved Castle Island.
He did, yeah. He visited.
He wanted to build his Castle of the Heroes. He wanted to build a Castle of the Heroes and bring mythical Ireland back into modern Ireland at the time. And one of his last meetings or get-togethers was Maud, or Lady Gregory, or Maud Gone. It's Maud Gone, actually. He said to her, "We should have built our Castle of the Heroes." That was their idea to build, but they never did. But that was Castle Island. But no, my other favourite one is Woodbrook. Now, Woodbrook isn't in Boyle. It's between Boyle and Carrick and Shannon. Woodbrook. And that was... David Thompson wrote a book in the 1930s. Was it probably later, because he was there in the 1930s with the Kirkwood family. It became a famous book. It wasn't a fictional book. It was a memoir, really. Right. And Woodbrook House with the Kirkwoods, and the horse Woodbrook won the Grand National in the UK. And remember I was saying these houses couldn't really survive in post-independent Ireland? That horse saved Woodbrook. That one horse saved Woodbrook. And there's another good horses, White something or other, won a lot of races. But Woodbrook is a special... Woodbrook is still there. I think it's I met the present owners at a talk recently. And that's a special house, but with that book that came out. Oh, it's a bit controversial, that book, to a modern audience. The girl in it was quite young, but
okay.
But there was nothing happened as such. But it's Woodbrook House would be one, and of course Abbey House in Boyle beside the Abbey.
That's right. Yeah.
I got cracking photographs of that from a lady in Australia, whose ancestor was a clergyman, lived there. And Windy Lund was a lady. She gave me a beautiful photograph of her ancestor standing out, crystal clear. Now, that's a photograph I wouldn't do anything with. Yeah. It's just...
What era or what year?
Oh, it's very early. It's mid, sort of later 19th century. And she has given me a photograph of Castle Island, standing from the middle of it, looking at the building, which I put into my second edition of my book. And I often share it on my page. Unheard of. This photo does not exist anywhere. And in that photograph, again, that one will never be altered or changed because it's crystal clear. You can see more or less the outline of what was the McDermott Castle within the structure that's there now. Well, it's in poor enough condition at the moment, but you can still see it. And there were two cracking photographs, and there was another few as well she gave me. But yeah, Abbey House in Boyle. I really like that one. And there's more. There's loads of them, of course, around Boyle. And
a lot of them would have vanished as well without record, I'd say.
They would have, yeah. And I get a lot of queries, Carlo, from people, do you have anything on this house? And I mightn't have even heard of it. And there'd be smaller ones, and I wouldn't have anything. And so it's hard to find information on some of these houses, really, without... I do try and say, look, try and get into an older member of the local community even. And the other good source that is rarely used, actually, is the Schools Commission. they're 1929, 30.
Is that the Dukas thing?
Dukas.
Dukas.ie.
If you go into that and type in a house,
amazing.
You could get because they're children in national schools that are speaking to their grandparents generally, or members of the community that they would have lived through the famine, and they often bring up because I remember I mentioned how important, and you said it yourself, the landed estates were in communities. They're a big part of the community, so a lot of those have information on the landed estates. So anyone for those smaller or medium-sized estates that there's nothing on, it's a source worth looking at. And maps. Maps is the only thing. I work as a civil engineer. Maps is the only thing I could use of benefit for historical research. But the Ordnance Survey maps that are all available online for free, they're absolutely brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah. And Paul, do you think that we romanticise a lot about the big house era because they're gone now, or is it that just...
it's starting to... I don't... Ireland is different because of the history and all of that. But we're starting to, and like even my book 20 years ago, like wouldn't have been that well received. Like I remember an elderly man in Mount Talbot saying to me, he's passed away since, he's glad he lived to see crows flying through the rooms of Mount Talbot House. Do you know, that was the feeling. And but as I said, the last generation were actually very, very nice and wanted to live in the house with no land. He was happy to live there and contribute to the Free State, but didn't work out. But there was some characters in that family before that mightn't have been as nice. So yeah, it's just there's a lot of interest in them now. Do you know Downton Abbey?
Yeah.
You know, my wife and myself.
Excellent.
It's a brilliant programme, and I think that sort of helped. And you know, people are interested in history, and they're a part of our history. And I just say that, like it or lump it or whatever, they are, and you can't erase history. And you just, I think the fact as well, some of them are hotels. Do you know, people can come and stay, and it's nice to treat yourself to a night away in one of these hotels. I would be spending too. We kind of most of us can't afford too long in them, but it is romantic. It is like you've weddings held in them. You know, we are, and the old photos that I put up with, as I said earlier, with the ladies with the way they're dressed and all that. So I think we are starting to, and do
you think would we be more comfortable then as a nation, Paul, discussing architecture as opposed to power?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
like the obvious.
Yeah, well, I think power and all that is gone. You know, and what happened with the church, of course, in Ireland, you know, where it's sort of fallen apart there as well. That trust in people in authority seems to have dissipated, and we're going back to look at the architecture. Yeah. You know, to look at, and these were built, and I keep saying it, these were built by Irish people. Yeah. The stonemasons, all of these were Irish, but architects maybe came from the UK or whatever, and our ancestors paid for them. Yeah. The rent paid, we paid for them. So like, and it's just one thing I found about the demolition of the houses that are not in my book is the stories of corruption that I won't repeat because I don't know is it factual or fiction. But things happened, and I know things happened in the Land Commission, and I know people that were let go because of shady dealings. And now the Land Commission that's all locked away, we can't see it, but even when it will be released at some stage. They'll have covered their tracks. We won't ever know the full extent of what happened with some of the houses. But there was deals done, there's no doubt, behind, and those things happened. And look, that's because no one cared, really, and human nature takes over sometimes.
Yeah. I think with the loss of those type of houses, though, Paul, as well, I think it was Ireland in some way rejecting part of its own history story. Yeah. You know, as you said about the obvious class and power difference.
Yeah, I think that's one example, Carlo, and it's Castle Kelly. Now, this is in County Roscommon. It's just over the border in County Galway, right beside where I grew up, in Ballygar. And that was demolished in the 60s, or the early 50s, I think. And now, that had been burnt during the War of Independence, but it was still standing. But that was associated with one of the last landlords, Dennis Henry Kelly, who was very, very unsavoury character locally. It would be thought of that way. And that was revenge as well, and demolished and burnt and everything. But within, like with Castle Island, within the structure of Castle Kelly was a 15th century tower house, an O'Kelly tower house. And in that castle, Macari Exedium, or the destruction of Cyprus, was written. That's the only account of the Williamite War from an Irish combatant's perspective. Colonel Charles O'Kelly lived there. He was in the Jacobite army, the armies of James II, was present at the Treaty of Limerick, and he came back and wrote this book. Now, the people have pseudonyms. It's written in Latin as well. I suppose they lost the war, so he was afraid of getting to, prosecuted or whatever, and everyone's given false names. Countries are given different names and all that. Cyprus, it's like but it's all factual. And he wrote that in that building with 5 foot thick walls that the army from Athlone had to come out to blow up. So in that building, and that it goes back further through to the Cromwellian War, through to the 9 Years' War, when an O'Kelly was inaugurated chief near there, which hadn't happened in generations. And it's just, all that was blown up because of a later generation. So, and there was no one shouted stop, The same with Moat Park, that was blown up with explosives. Now, there was people shouted stop for that, but, it's just, it was obliterating history, but it's history. Yeah. And some of it is very important history. King House, Rockingham here, hugely important.
And if the likes of Rockingham, King House, Frybrook, and all those other estates could speak today in 2026, Paul, what do you think they would want the people of, just say, Boyle to know?
Yeah, they just want them to know everything. And that's when I meet the descendants of the families. It's all out there. I sent some of the chapters to the descendants, and the bad is in there.
Yeah.
Hands up.
Good, the bad, the ugly, yeah.
Hands are up. That was very, very unfortunate. I had a lady, would you believe, an American lady, in a field in County Roscommon, crying to me and apologising for one of her ancestors. Do you believe that? Because he was a very unsavoury character. Yeah. But she was devastated. And I said, look, she was a very, very nice lady. That's just the way it was. And but we should know about them, good and the bad. Yeah. But if the house is standing, you can tell that story, Yeah. And some of them didn't have too bad people. Some families would have been very well respected and were very well missed when they left, And like Mount Talbot there was 45 people out of work overnight, including my grandfather, and there's no other work. They paid well. Then in the seasons, the summer seasons, there was loads more hired up. Now, it's just that money was all gone. And it's ironic, a lot of those people ended up in England, after the War of Independence. And some of the combatants in the War of Independence ended up in England. And so I think if the war is standing, now, if the wall wouldn't have a function today, but some of them would, there wouldn't be the numbers or the money to have them all saved. But there's certainly 5 or 6 of them that are a massive, massive loss. And Rockingham is one. French Park is another. And Moat is certainly another. They were fabulous buildings that could have served some sort of function. And whatever that might be, we don't know.
There's a place out where my mum was born in Emla, out near Kingsland, but it's Kingsland House.
Kingsland
now
House.
It's a derelict.
Yeah.
I passed it once there recently.
Yeah.
That just came into my memory there. Did that come on your radar?
It did. I have a photo of that in my book, in the lad. Remember I mentioned chapter 13?
Oh,
that's
yes.
there.
Okay.
And it's one when it's standing. And I forget the gentleman now that sent it to me. Some fella sent it to me. Yeah. Very important that I acknowledge everything I share on my page or in my book. The person is acknowledged.
You do.
I do, because it's important. And now sometimes I can't control where it goes from there.
Of course, but at least when it originates from you, you're given the accreditation.
But that's in it. That's in the definitely in the second edition.
Yeah,
Kingsland House, a medium-sized house, but it was actually very nice. From what I can recollect, it had unusual enough chimneys. I think that house.
Okay,
from memory.
And do you think future generations in Boyle, Paul, will care about these estates as much as we do, this current generation, or do you think we're the last generation? With
I don't know. I think I'd have great hope. I'd have great hope for the future, because remember I mentioned that 12-year-old girl that brought my book to bed and is now going to go on and study. I've my nephews, my sister Sheila's lads, they've read the book. One of them is very interested in history. The two of them are, actually. And I think they're going to come at it thinking differently, because we're internationally thinking now. Yeah. I find, people that are immigrating now to America, I remember them immigrating in the 80s, they might have their heads down, no confidence, mightn't have gone to third level, or no money starting out, they might feel a bit inferior. We don't have that anymore. We arrive into countries with our chests out. We're well educated. We can go anywhere. We're an addition to any country, and we can go and enjoy. And I think we think differently. We think international. I see it with my kids. They're 16 and 14. I don't think they have the baggage. My generation would have a bit of the baggage from before. And now it's important. It's just so important that the entire history, as I mentioned, is known. And I think I'd have hope for the future. Certainly would. But you know what I don't have hope for? Photographs. We're the most photographed generation ever. And we're leaving the least evidence after us, because it's all on memory sticks, or it's on password, it's in the clouds. I'm saying to people, print them off. Every now and again, I'll go into the chemist and I'll print 100 photographs. I'll throw them in a box or something, and I'll write on them what they are. Because, I'm doing a master's in history at the university at the moment, and my supervisor for my thesis, Professor Brendan McSuvna, we were just saying this, that there's nothing like getting I do get envelopes every week from people posting me photographs, old photographs. And there's nothing in the world like peeling back that envelope and opening these photographs and looking at them. Yeah. And I just think, now maybe technology, it's safe, they're all safe, maybe they are, but I just would worry we're leaving very little evidence after us.
That's been talked about a lot.
Has it? Yeah.
It has. And I think, look, I always say as well, we're in the current age of technology that we have. We have all this modern technology, and we're recording less meaningful stuff.
Yeah.
We're not. We're documenting meaningful.
Yeah.
We're just not doing as much as we should be, I think, with the technology that we have.
Yeah. Like those videos now of French Park that the current Baron Dufresne sent me, they were recorded back in the 50s and saved, and I digitized them. Yeah. But there was a physical video. They were on a reel. Sorry,
reel.
But they were physical. You could pick one up. So I brought it to a guy in Galway, and he developed it. But I think we need to go back to some form of physical.
Well, I think having both is the best option, if possible.
Yeah.
Now, I know everyone takes so many photos these days that you really couldn't go and print everything.
I know.
But print the ones that are meaningful to you. Don't leave them on the phone.
Yeah.
I always say this to friends and family, because I'm meticulous I have to have 3-4 backups of everything.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
well, if you do that,
and have to have them in different places as well.
Yeah.
So you have redundancy built into that.
And I do the same.
But most people they have them on their phone.
Yeah.
And if they don't have it backed up to iCloud or Google Photos, and they lose that phone, it's gone.
Yeah. And maybe now the younger generation will be more savvy that way. But I had a phone that fell into a bucket of water or something. I can't remember. But gone.
Gone, yeah.
Everything. And now I'd some of it downloaded, but some of it I hadn't. And just another professor in one of the lectures I was in the university was saying he's the only one that knows his passwords. Like he says, if I drop dead in the morning, all my stuff, he's professor, he's heaps of stuff. He says, no one will be able to access it.
Yeah, that's not good.
It just, I think it's an area we just maybe I'm old fashioned, I don't know, but.
Well, I think, we are on that cusp of everything. Yeah. We're the last generation that will have a tangible kind of connection to something analog, whereas everything will be, unfortunately.
Yeah, and maybe it'll work. Maybe
there will, yeah.
Yeah.
And Paul, going forward then, any plans for the Facebook page or another book maybe?
I don't know, Carlo. I'd love to do another book. Now, the problem with the Facebook page is just going to stay there. Yeah. I like it. As I said, it's simple. It's not very good technically. I can use it fine. There's brilliant stuff coming to me. And there's a great interaction with the audience. And that's going to just keep going, hopefully. But book-wise, there's the makings of another third edition. Like, yeah, third edition, definitely. But I'd really, really need a publisher. You know, that's why I went back to do to try and become a professional historian, because you're taken more seriously. I think I'd have the masters. I hope to do a PhD as well, which will be something. I met Dr. Terence Dooley actually in Maynooth University a couple of years ago. I was interested in doing a PhD, but I'd have to go back to Maynooth doing lectures, which I couldn't possibly do with work,
right?
Because it's a long journey, you know.
Of course, big commitment.
But anyway, but I might go back to him now when I have the masters and see. Do a PhD there, and a book would develop from that. Yes. He was looking at a very interesting subject that might get me shot, actually. But
is it worth getting shot
yeah,
over?
it's post-independent. What I mentioned earlier about the dodgy dealings, but it would be a book that or a paper or thesis that would be very, very important in Irish history. But
as you said though, Paul, like history is history. The good, the bad, and ugly has to be known. You don't have to agree with it, but it has to be known. Yeah. We can't.
Yeah, and I write history, and I try to keep it in my book. And some fella got on to me and said, "Look, you're putting up demolished houses the whole time." Or there's very few standing. I can't help it. I try to do Clonallis as often as I can, or King House, or whatever. But you know, that's just the way it is. Yeah, it's all out there, and you have to tell it as it is and what happened. And there's some of it you'll understand, but it's very important for people to make up their own minds. That Sonny Cronin I mentioned earlier, his wife, Emma, God rest her, she lived to just 102, I think. I used to call to her regularly. And when I was writing my first book on Mount Talbot, I wrote something on, and she read it, and she says, "You need to change that now. You're giving your opinion. You need to be impartial." She says, "You write it, let the audience decide." And that's the best bit of advice I ever got
as a historian.
Yeah. Because a lot of what you read now, even in in papers or on magazines, it's opinion.
It is. It's opinion.
It's someone's belief, maybe, and they mightn't even know they're doing it.
Yeah.
But write it raw. Write it, bring it back, strip it back. And I'd have beliefs. I'd have my own opinions.
Of course.
But I try to leave them out. You know, and some things I'd post something and say, "Oh, you're always." It's not. I'm just giving you the facts. This is it. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I think that's often important. It's often important because the social media is brilliant, but it can become a cesspit.
It can.
Like the recent thing there that happened with that poor guy that came on for Ireland in the rugby from Cork, born and bred in Cork, in Cove, and he came on for Ireland, and the abuse he got online by being, the colour of his skin was absolutely...
Yeah, that's crazy stuff.
It's so pathetic and wrong, and I don't know where we're going as a nation. But it's a minority, but it's a very loud minority.
It is, and it's also being able to hide behind fake accounts.
Yeah, fake accounts, and you can say what you like. And I get a bit of that on my page, but not very much. And as I said, there's 22,000 followers that all enjoy it. And they contribute. Everyone contributes.
Well, when you get, I think, in your instance, Paul, when you get to a certain level of an amount of members and followers, you're never going to please everyone. Nor you should.
Yeah, I'm not.
No, you should.
And look, I some people I had to sort of get rid of them, to be honest.
Yeah.
They'd say things for a while, and because everyone's entitled to their opinion, and that I'd be totally in a democracy or anywhere. You need that. But I remember one. I won't go into it, but one is commented on a picture of 1971. Which there was no tenants. There was no one living. It was completely wrong. Yeah. It could have been right for another photo. So I just, but generally the comments are very good. Now the only problem I have is I'm on my own, of course, and I can't admin it 24 hours a day. So, but I there's some great stuff, and I get some great private messages from people that don't want to share it on the page in public. Just there this morning, now I got a lovely photograph again. So, and my email address, of course, is there as well.
Yeah, well, I'll put in the blog post that goes out with this, I'll put in the links to the Facebook page or email and all that for someone to contact you. It's probably easiest to contact you through Facebook or quicker.
Yeah, or by email.
Right.
Yeah. And either or. Facebook, because Facebook, I guess an alert on my phone or whatever.
And before we wrap it up, Paul, is there anything we are not talking about that we should be?
I might go back to the book, a third edition of the book. There was a book published there this week, and I'm going in to buy it now, actually. I might go into Unabod and buy it today, on the Holy Wells of Roscommon. So I'm really looking forward to it. But that was 100% funded. 100% funded. And but the author is a professional in that field or whatever, and I'm really looking forward to reading it, as I said. But I'd love if someone, or I'd be able to get, because as I said, actually the second edition I probably lost money on it if you were to add it all up, and I'm not going to do that. We've a 16-year-old, we've a 14-year-old.
You
College
can't do
is
that.
coming. I can't.
It doesn't make sense.
I think there's a story there to be told, and there's a good 20% extra that could go into a third edition at this stage.
Right.
Oh, there is, yeah.
Okay.
There's stuff I've got, and as I said, there's stuff
more
coming
photos and
this
everything.
Summer,
Yeah.
So it's there. I'd be willing to,
Well, if anyone's listening that knows any connections,
or
get
publishers,
in touch. Or publishers, get in touch with Paul.
Where the money is, the printing is bananas at the moment, but is like to get it from publisher, we do it like it's prehistoric stuff really, but we'd set it up on publisher, and to get that printable, you have to get in a graphic designer.
Illustrator.
That's money. That's money. There's money everywhere.
Time.
But I'd love to do something in the future, but I'd need a bit of help. When I retire, I'm 52 this year. I'll be retired at 60. Hopefully have a PhD at that stage. I could probably afford to maybe print some stuff myself then at that stage, but at the moment, no. But there's more there. There's definitely more there.
We'll watch this space, as they say, Paul. And I really appreciate you coming on and giving me your time. And I hope people listening to this get something out of it, as I'm sure they will. And all the best in the future. And if there is a third edition, we'll have you back.
We will. I know you will. I look at it. I really appreciate it. And any excuse to come back to Boyle, Carlo. As I said, I've missed it. I've missed my trips into Unabon, into Anna when she was there, and into King House to Patricia and Tommy Egan, and all the people. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you.